Okay. Okay, so this class we will concentrate mainly on control statements in Java. But before going into control statements, you can see my screen, right? Okay. Okay, before we go into the control statements, let's remind ourselves what booleans are. Can anybody tell me what booleans are? What is boolean? Can anybody tell me? Okay. Could unmute yourself and talk. All right. Okay, booleans are what we know as a true or false data type, right? Your yes or no. Either it is true or false, either it's on or off. Now, Boolean type is how we are going to control statements. A Boolean is a primitive data type. Now, the next one, the Boolean expressions. What are Boolean expressions? Boolean expressions are any statements in Java that return a Boolean type. For example, if when we add two numbers, a plus b, what is the output of those two numbers? It's actually a number, right? If a is equal to 10 and b is equal to 20, if I say a plus 20, a plus b, the value is 30, which is a number. But a Boolean expression is anything that gives me an output value in a Boolean type, which gives me a true or false statement. So if I say a number is greater, if I'm going to ask Java if a number is greater than another number, if it's A greater than B, it can either tell me yes, it is greater or no, it is not greater. So it's going to return to me a value in true or false statement, like in the example. So that is Boolean expressions. Okay, control statements. Now in any programming language, even in Java, we have a sequence for execution, right? We have step one, then step two, then step three. The code executes in a sequence of steps, one after the other. Now, suppose you don't want that. Suppose after line 10, you want it to execute line 14 or line 16. How will you do this? You have to tell the compiler that after 14, I want you to go to line 16. And why do you want to go to line 16, skipping lines 12 to 12, 13, 14, and 15? Is based on some condition, right? How do you do that? You have to tell your Java program to specifically skip it. You are changing the control from line 11 instead of line 12. You're asking the Java compiler's control to go from line 11 to line 16. So you are controlling the flow of execution of steps. So in order to do that, I mean, any statements that does that is called control statements. Okay. So in order to do that, we have three types of control flow statements. Okay, three types: decision-making statements, loop statements, and jump statements. You got it? Okay. So what are decision-making statements? Decision-making statements is just like how we make decisions. If I want this, I'm going to do this. If I don't want this, I'm going to do that. So it will decide based on a condition. Remember in flowchart, true or false, that yeah, if a condition is true, we execute a sequence of steps. If a condition is false, we are going to execute a sequence of steps. So in order to do that, exactly, see, what does it say? Evaluate the Boolean expression and control the program flow depending upon the result of the condition provided. Okay, we classify the decision making statements again into two types: the if statement and the switch statement. The if statement is one of the very basic, simple control flow statement in a programming language, in any programming language. Okay, the if statement, yeah, like I simply said, if something is true, you're going to execute something. If it is not true, we are going to execute something. And how we are going to layer in, we can add multiple conditions together. We can add condition inside condition, all of that. We again have 4 basic classifications. Simple if, which is nothing but a simple one condition. If else, more like do this, do that. If else if is like adding 2 to 3 conditions in a sequence of step. Nested if is adding a condition inside a condition. So we'll see each in detail. Okay, like I said, a simple if statement is going to be like this. You're going to have a condition. If it is going to say it is true, it is going to execute a bunch of code. If it is going to be false, it is going to skip this code, the if part of the code, and go to the next sequence of step. Your syntax will be if, open and close bracket, your condition, which will be either A greater than B or B greater than C or something. But the output of that condition, it will be a Boolean type. If it is true, if something is true, then the code to be executed will be executed. If something is false, then the entire bunch of code will be skipped by the controller, because some condition is not true. We are only asking the compiler to execute only if that condition and criteria is met. Next is the if-else statement. Now, the if-else statement is simple. In here, only if the condition is true, we are asking the compiler to execute some code. In if-else statement, we are saying if the condition is true, execute this code. If it is false, execute something else. So we have 2 different code to execute based on the condition. Okay, and the next one will be the Java if-else if ladder. Now, suppose you have more than instead of just 2 conditions, instead of just one condition being true or false, you have to check 3 to 4 conditions together. Then you use something called if-else if ladder. Now, this is nothing but if some condition, if the first condition is true, directly finish the statement and go to the very next line. I mean, like after all the if-else if thing. Or if it is false, you're going to check another condition. And if it is true, you're going to execute something. If it is false, you're going to check another condition. Like you are stacking up conditions inside your Java if-else if. Now, when you use Java else if, you should always finish with else. I mean, like, I'm not saying you have to, but it will be better if you finish it with an else statement. Okay, next is your nested if statement. Your nested if is nothing but you have a big if on top. If some condition has to be passed, and then inside that you are having another set of conditions. This is different from your nested if. Your nested if is different from your ladder, because that will be like a step-by-step execution. Here you're putting everything inside one if. You can have an else if ladder inside your nested if. It all depends on what you are going to code and your requirement, your problem statement, and the solution you're trying to find for it. Next is the conditional operator. Remember, we saw about conditional operators when we saw about operators in Java. A conditional operator is something that helps you do your basic simple if or your basic if else statement. Instead of writing is 1, 2, 3, approximately 5 to 6 lines of code in one line. What it essentially means here is if you look at the example, string result, if time is less than 18, we are going to say good day. So if it is going to be less than 18, it's still morning. See, this is the true condition, this is the false condition. But if time is greater than 18, it will be good evening. So what essentially here is we're doing the if else block of code, which is a 4 to 5 to 6 lines of code in a single line. This will be very helpful when you're writing lots of data, like when you're writing lots and lots of code, and here is basically assigning a value to a variable. So for that, you don't have to write 6 lines of code. You can do this in a single line of code. That's what they mean. For that, we use this thing called ternary operator, which is nothing with your question mark and your colon expression together, placed up in that particular order. All right. Next is your switch statement. Now, your switch statement, if you look at this, it is something like your if-else if ladder. Okay. Now, here, instead of it is quite different from your if-else if ladder also, but essentially here we have multiple blocks of code. For example, you have 10 blocks of code. Each it has to be executed in only at some time. 10 different conditions that you want to check, or 10 different blocks of code, and you don't have to execute everything only in some time. Instead of writing if, else if, and checking each and every time, you could evaluate your condition first and then execute the block of code based on that. Suppose, let's say you have, let us look at the structure, then you'll understand. Your syntax will be like this: switch your expression, case value 1, case value 2, break, or all of this. Here, we'll see examples. You will understand when we see examples. But what here it exactly means is, suppose you have, can I say, okay, suppose we have a vowel. Let's take a vowel. A, E, I, O, U. Suppose if we have in the string of letters, if it is A, I need to do something. If it is E, I need to do something. If it is I, A, E, I, O, they are actually what you call them primitive data types. They're actually characters. They're not exactly true statements or true or false statements. Here, if you see, it will be like the case variables can be int, short, byte, or char. So instead of writing if else, checking if variable A is equal to A, do something. Else if a variable E is equal to variable A is equal to E, or variable is equal to I, or variable is equal to O. Instead of doing the else if each and every time, you directly know it is going to be A, E, or I. So you can tell the code directly to go to the first block of code if it is A, the second block of code when it is E, the third block of code when it is I. Instead of asking the compiler to check the variable every time, you can directly ask it to go there. So when you write a switch statement, you always have to keep in mind that your case values have to be similar to your expression. For example, here, your switch expression is where you give your value there, that one, and your value 1, your value 2 have to be of the same data type. That is, I cannot compare my vowels with my numbers because they are of 2 different data types. Got it? Like that. And then the cases cannot be duplicated. What it means is each case 1 and case 2 have to be different. I cannot check case 1 also be for checking whether if it is A, and case 2 also being for checking it to be character A, because that will be duplicate. It will not understand, right? It will not know which one to execute, the first one or the second one, because for both the cases the conditions are getting met. You will get a compilation error if you do that. Next one is your default statement. Your default statement is here. If suppose all these 4 conditions are not getting met, if all these 3 conditions are not met, if there are no vowels, if there is no vowels that you're giving here, then what has to happen? Your final statement, your default statement will get executed. The code to be executed if all cases are not matched. The next one is your break statement. Now, your break statement terminates the switch block when the condition is satisfied. It is not optional. If not used, next case is executed. Now, suppose you want to save your time. Essentially, in every program, your control flows stepwise only. So first, it will come and check this one. If it is A, then it will see E, then it will see I. It will check like that. Suppose if A is met here, your first block of code is executed. You don't want it to waste time going and checking the second and the third block, right? It's just totally pointless and useless because it is not going to execute the statement 2 and the statement 3. So instead of that, you can tell the compiler that you found the value at the first block itself, then break. Break is what we call as jump statements. We will see them in detail after a few minutes. So break. So what you're telling the compiler here is after this code is executed, since you got what you want done, you are saying break out of the switch case. I did what I have to do. You don't have to go checking the other cases. You can finish the switch case and move out of the switch case. So the control breaks from your switch and comes back to after your switch statement. Got it? If there is break. Otherwise, it will go here and go back and checking each case. Not necessary for us. Okay. I mean, if you want it, if your code requires you to do and execute all the cases, you can make it happen. But mostly we don't do that, right? That we are not writing your switch statement to execute all the cases. We execute all the statements inside your cases. Okay, we'll see some examples now. You see the examples with syntaxes. Okay, the first one is find the greatest of three numbers A, B, C. I'll create a new full package for today. Okay, so I'll close the others.
हेलो हाय यश सॉरी टू डिस्टर्ब यू
Yeah,
एक्चुअली मुझे ना
yeah, tell me.
वो है ना मुझे सॉर्टिंग के लिए भेजना था ईमेल से। आई एम जस्ट कंफ्यूज कि एग्जिस्ट को सीसी में रखना है या टू में रखना है। ओके थैंक यू दैट्स इट।
Okay, I didn't get what was happening, but you got what you wanted. Okay, shall I continue now? Evans? Okay. Okay. All right. Because the first one that we're going to do now is like find the greatest of three numbers A, B, C. So can anybody give me how we could do this? So first I'm going to write a method for this. Public void, I'm not going to return anything. I'm going to say greatest of three. Okay, I'm going to pass the value now. I'm going to pass int A, comma, int B, comma, int C. Let's do that. So I'm going to write an if block first. So I'm going to compare int A, B, and C, all right? So first, note the syntax if, open bracket. Yeah. Okay, open. Come on. This is your syntax. Inside here, you're going to write your condition. So first, I'm going to check if A is greater than B. And then I'm going to say and if A is greater than C. See, now these both the conditions together will return to me something true. Okay. Then I'm going to say the greatest is right, because if A is greater than B and if A is also greater than C, then we know that the greatest number is A here. Now suppose that is not happening. What is the next one that we can say here? Now I can say else if B is greater than C, then we obviously know copy that and paste here. Okay. It's going to be B. So finally, if it is not, even if that is not happening, we then know the greatest number is C. Okay, now listen. You don't actually have to put an open and a closed bracket when you write the statement if it is a single line statement. If you're going to have more than 3 to 4 lines, then you will have to put it inside your open and your closed curly braces. It is always better to use it. But if I'm going to have only one line of execution, suppose after else, there's only one line for me, then I don't have to put a bracket. But if I'm going to write something else here, that will not be part of my else, okay? If I write a code here, if I write some code here, it will be not part of else. It will be after the full completion of else. Else finishes here itself. But if I want to write another code, like 3 to 4 lines of code, then I will have to put my else also in a open and a closed bracket, because what I'm saying here is these are called code punctuator icons. Like I'm saying the entire bunch of code that I'm going to write here between the open bracket and my closed bracket belong to the else if condition. But if I don't put that, Java will consider only the next line as part of your else statement or your else if, whichever it is, or your even if your if, only the next line it will consider. The others, then it will assume it is outside your condition. So we finished writing the code. Now we have to pass in the value. So let's call the function. How do we call the function? We have to create an object for our class first. Flow object 1 is equal to new I'm going to close this and call object dot five. See? So essentially the control went from here to here to here. I run it. Okay. So we printed the greatest of 3 numbers. Suppose if I change my value to be 10 and rerun it. Okay, 4 to save. See, now I hard coded the values. You can also write code how to get the input from the user by using your scanner class, which we saw in last class. You can use that, get the input from the user, and then also call the same methods here. Okay. So next is like find if a number is positive, negative, or zero. Okay, we'll do that also. Write another code here now. Okay, how can we do this now? If I say int a is greater than 0, it means it is positive, right? And then I'm going to say else if a is less than 0, it's going to be negative. And finally, else a is 0. Why did I give 3 parameters for this? Okay, we don't need 3 parameters for this. If I give minus 4 here, minus 8 of minus 4. See, so this is how you change it. Based on some condition in your if else if, some conditions are going to get executed, some are not going to get executed. These are just basic simple statements that we use as an example, but in real time and when you solve complex problems and complex problem statements that you have in some of the in online, when you find if you put Java programs to practice or something like that, you will find interesting problem statement, like exactly like a math problem. They'll be giving you like you know what, if a is going to be this value, then you do this. If b is going to be this value, it's very interesting. Try out some online Java programs. It will be it will be like playing a game for you, where you will learn and also get to use your brain and find solutions to problems. So next is given, find if a given mark is a pass mark, and find if it's first class or second class. Okay, for this we can use, I think we can use nested if, right? Yeah, we can use a nested if for this. Okay. Well, let's write another program now. Okay, so I'm going to write public void another function, public void mark result. You know your school, whether when they say you've got your they use. Okay, I'll first finish the program and then we'll discuss that. So first we need to check if what the mark that the person has got, or the student has got, is actually a pass mark. So what int is greater than, what's the pass mark here? 40. Okay, so if he's got a mark greater than 40, it means he actually passed. So we're going to tell them first that you passed. Okay, he passed. But if he didn't get more marks more than 40, we have to tell him that she failed. Okay. So, but if he's in pass mark now, he got greater than 40, we still don't know if he's in first class or if he's in second class. So now we are going to write another if statement inside here, which is going to check mark is greater than 60 and maybe mark should be less than 75. If that condition is true, we can tell them that you got passed in first class. If that is, then we can check else if mark is greater than 75, we can tell them you passed in distinction. Now, if both these criteria is not met, it actually means he passed in second class. So this is how you do it, okay? So now what we have done here inside this block, if and inside here, is actually nested if. We have one big if outside, and inside that we have several other conditions that we are checking. So this is nested if. Okay, now we will do the same thing now. We will call the function that we wrote and pass a mark, maybe let's say 64. See, so it is telling yes, you passed, and you passed in first class. Suppose I give 35. See, it's saying failed. You failed. I'm sorry, you failed. Now, this is one of the basic logics that, if you think about it, that we use in maybe your online results that you see. Right now, everything is digitalized, right? Your results are coming in your websites. This is a basic idea of how they would have coded to give you the result, how they would have coded to print the value or to tell you whether you passed or you failed. See, they cannot be entering the values for everybody manually, correct? They cannot be, if there are 60 students in your class, and hypothetically, now our teachers would have initially like made a calculation and put and seen that if it's passed or failed, they would have done it for individually for each student in their record books. But now they don't have to do that. If you write this, if you wrote this program, a simple program, all your teacher has to do is give this mark, enter the student's mark here, and he or she will know if they passed in the first class, distinction, or the second class. So this is a basic idea. See, even right now, with what knowledge that we have in Java, which is not even very we don't even know advanced Java at all. All of these concepts are basic. With this basic concept itself, you have an idea, or you know how to make a what do you call a basic program or a basic application to find whether a student passed or failed, and in what class did they pass or fail. It's interesting, right? It's one of the smallest application that you can use and do it on your own. So then imagine if how much you can automate, or you can make programs, or you can write applications and codes to automate, or like, have a computer do something that you do manually every time. How to call a function in main? I didn't get that. Will you want to? Yeah, sure. Okay. See, in Java, when you create anything that is even if you have a variable that is outside your class, for example, your int a, I'll just give a value here now. Maybe let's not use way. I'll use something called int s is equal to 5. Now this is something called as instance variable stages, and this, what we wrote here, all these three methods are your class methods. Now in Java, in order to call or use your class method or your class variables over here, your instance variables, you need to create an object for your class, okay? Because in Java, everything is an object. So first you need to create an object for your class. So how do you create an object for your class? The syntax to create an object for your class is your class name first, then the variable name. It can be object1, it can be object2, it can be anything that you want. It's a name, it's an identifier. So you can give what you want, followed by an equal to sign, followed by new, and then your class name with open and close brackets. This is actually nothing but you're calling a constructor. We saw constructors in last class, right? Constructors are default special methods in your Java program. Okay, whether you explicitly write a constructor or not, whether if you explicitly write a constructor saying examples for flow. Now, what are constructors? Constructors are nothing but your special methods. They're special methods because they have the same name as the class name. That's why they're called special methods. And this is a constructor. So even though if I did not mention my constructor explicitly in my Java program, the compiler automatically creates a constructor for my Java program examples for flow. So what you are doing here is actually you are creating an object for this particular class code that we have written here. You understood that? You understood what objects are? Or should I give you some more examples? So once you create an object for your class, examples for flow, now you created an object using the syntax. Now, in order to call any method inside this class, you should use your object here. It's called your class object. Your class object dot and then your method. It will itself, if I just give greatest of 3, I say 5, 2, 8. Look at the error here. It will say that cannot make a ref. Okay, now this is a different error. I'll explain to you what static means here. I'll explain it to you in a few minutes. But what essentially here they're saying is the compiler cannot identify it. It cannot identify greatest of 3. So in order to say that, for it to identify greatest of 3, that is why we're using the objects. You can access your methods inside your class only using the object. Now, since he asked, there's another concept here. It's called static methods and static variables. Now, static method and static is actually a keyword that you use if you don't want to create objects for your class. Now, if you don't want to create an object for your class every time you use this method, you can use something called a static keyword, and you can directly use you can directly call the method. This is called method calling, right? This is called method implementation, and this is called method calling. You can directly call the method by not creating an object for it. We will look at that in maybe in the next few classes. Why do we have something called static methods and static variables? Okay. So essentially, to call a method, what you have to do is you have to create an object for the class in which the method is. And after you create an object for the class, you use that object, and the syntax is object dot and your method name. That is your syntax to call your method. Okay. Okay, okay. The next one is, we'll go on to the next example. The Java program to check whether an input character is vowel or a consonant. Now, this was the example I gave for switch cases, right? Okay. Now let's write another code. Public void the input for this is going to be character C. What? Why not? Variable check error. It will give me an error now. Okay, we'll finish the code and then check that. And now I'm going to write something called switch C. Let's go back and check the syntax now because I was forgot. What are you suggesting for me here? I changed my type into blue. So what's wrong? What's wrong? Is there any other error here? No. Did I do something wrong? Okay, we'll figure that out. Give me a minute. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. I figured out my pro. Okay. That was quite interesting. Okay. Look here. Can anybody tell me what's the mistake I did here? Did anybody notice? Can you see that it is actually telling me there's an error going on? The screen is telling me I actually have my syntax and everything correct, but it's still telling me that there is an error on the screen. I'm going to show again. I'm going to show my entire. Can anybody look at it and tell me what could be the issue now in my program?
Okay. That function you are making it inside the mark.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't notice that. So when I was checking, like, why is it showing me an error? Why is it showing me an error? Because I have been trying to write the function inside the method. Like see the entire method block. I wrote my new method also inside the other method. I'm writing my new check letters method inside my mark result method, which is not possible in Java. That's why it's throwing an error. I was like, what is going on? What is going on? Okay. See, now there's no error. Now it's just asking me to write a proper code. Okay. So now I'm going to see case is going to be A. And I'm going to say I can say it's a vowel. See, there's a better way to do this, but I'm using switch case just because. Okay, I made another mistake here. Wait, I'll finish it. Give me a minute to finish mine. So your syntax is switch, open and close bracket, your character or your expression, and then your open and your close curly brackets, and then after that you're going to write your cases, blocks for cases, A, E. I'll copy this. How many vowels do we have? A, E, I. Okay. So we have 5 vowels, and then if it's not a vowel, what if it's not a vowel, we have that it is a consonant. You can say consonant. See, now I actually did not use a break statement. It is still okay. It will still run. If I don't want it to keep checking the other statements, I can give a break statement. Okay. Well, let's run and see this. I'm going to use the same object I created last time. I'm going to use only the small letters, okay, because we did not do any case checking there. You're saying it's a vowel now. If I give maybe, it says it's a consonant. This is how you use your switch case now. The syntax for your switch case is your switch, your expression here, and then your case, your expression, your data type here, whatever that you're going to check, and then a colon, and then what you want it to do. Break statement you can use, it is not mandatory, but it is better to use because you're using your cases only to direct or to control the flow of your program. So once this is executed, I don't want all of these to get checked. Okay, but if I don't put a break statement after executing this line, it will go again check the case, which is also useful if you code in a long time, if you code from a lot of complicated logic. But based on that, you can use a break statement or not use a break statement. And default statement helps you to, and then finally, after all your cases, you have your default statement. This is with your switch cases. Now, if you notice in Java or in any programming language, we have this thing called indentation. Okay, we always try to write the code with indentation. It is proper programming. For example, when I wrote my public class, all my first line here starts immediately. Okay, after I wrote my public class, the logic inside my public class, inside from the class is starting bracket and the class is ending bracket, you can see all my methods have one tab space. Can you see that? Now in my IDE, it automatically writes the code like that. Okay, when I automatically go for one line to the next line, it automatically indents it. For example, when I wrote an instance variable inside my class here, the code knew that it has to be indented only once, like it needed only one tab of space. Then when I wrote another method here, your public static void main, now if you look at it from here, you have another, see, it automatically gives me after one tab space from here. It's called indentation. It makes your code more readable. It makes it more understanding. It is not actually needed that you have to write it like that. I can write it here. The compiler will understand it. But we do that. It's called proper coding rules or whatever. It helps you because everybody follows this. No? It helps you read it. Now you are able to understand that this bunch of code is actually part of public static void main. When you look at it on a whole, when you write lots of lines of code, you will understand that. Now again, if you look here, we have our public greatest, like our method here, which is starting with an indentation. And after that, inside if we are changing the control, we have another block of code. That block of code is also written with an indentation here. Suppose even if we had a nested if, right? Yeah, look at here. We have if with an indentation, and for this if we have another indentation. So technically, when you look at this on a whole, you will understand that this system out is also a part of if, but it's inside some other block. So we use indentation in Java, which is very helpful for the readability of the code. So you will write the code in a big application. You will write the code today, and you will understand the logic. Suppose even after a few days, you come back to check why you wrote something. You need to understand it. You need to understand the code easily. So for us to read the code better and for someone else to understand the code better, we follow some rules. Those are what we were looking at, Java's basic rules. You are case sensitive, camel casing. This is how you're supposed to do something, all of that. Okay. We finished all the examples. Okay, we finished all kind of basic examples for today. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. So today we just saw one of the very basic if-else statements. This is actually not something only Java has. It's a basic basic programming languages control statement. So we saw that. We saw how to. We saw some examples. We saw the syntax of if-else, else-if, nested-if, and switch cases. And we called them. We refreshed our memory on how to call the methods. We refreshed our memory about constructors again. And we saw some basic simple examples. Okay, guys, that's it for today. It's already 11. In the next class, we'll finish the control statements, the loop control statements. And probably after that, we will go into the advanced Java topics, which are also kind of basic topics, but these are basic programming. What we saw till now, what we are seeing till now, I will not say they are exactly Java concepts. They are actually programming concepts, programming language concepts with Java syntax. We are learning it with Java rules. But the actual object-oriented programming concepts of Java, we'll be learning it in future classes, maybe after the next class. By next class, I'm hoping to finish the basic concepts. After that, we'll have the actual advanced topics of Java, the actual Java concepts. Okay, I have a small announcement. We will not be having class on this Saturday because I am traveling somewhere. I will be out. I will not be able to take a class. So I hope to see you guys on